Good evening. My name is Bob Steele, and on behalf of my fellow Aspen Institute trustees, let me be the first to welcome you to our evening to recognize the McNulty Prize, which we're excited about to describe tonight and just introduce you to the winner for this year's prize. You know, at the Aspen Institute, we have a series of programs, but one of the most important ones are our efforts to organize and train great leaders. And we speak continually, we hope, about the idea of values-based leaderships and how we can see that spreading and how we can encourage it in different ways. And sometimes we organize it in geographic areas where we've had leadership programs in different parts of the world. And in a couple of places about education and the environment, we've organized leadership programs that focus specifically on a cause or a root challenge that we want to attack. But basically, the idea of effective leadership is something we speak about all the time at the Institute, and we see it as one of our ambitions and core goals. As part of that, we're pleased here tonight to talk to you a bit about the Aspen Global Leadership Prize, the McNulty Prize, that is really something close to my heart. Like many of you here, I knew John McNulty well and was fortunate enough to call him my colleague and partner for a long time when we were both, and many of you here I know from Goldman Sachs. And I think for John, the idea of recognizing, encouraging, and training young leaders was something that was really a central part of his DNA. And all of us that worked with him knew the young people that he inspired and challenged, and then challenged, and then challenged, I think continually, which was his way of trying to take the best out of young people and things like that. So I think it's especially appropriate that we're here to talk about this year's McNulty Prize and to think about John for a moment too this evening and the efforts that he did to build leadership and the special qualities that were John's, and to have that as be a lens that we think about the evening through. So let me introduce Ann McNulty, who'll be the first of our speakers, and say on behalf of the Aspen Institute, thanks to all of you for being here, but also Ann, thanks to you and your family for organizing this prize to represent and to recognize, rather, the good work of our leadership programs. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome. First of all, I would like to thank Bob for that great introduction. As all of you know, Bob is not only chair of the Aspen Institute, but deputy mayor of New York. Now, as he faces unemployment in the near future, we would like to take a moment to thank him for his years of service to the city. We are so pleased this year to have such a great turnout for this event. It's a very special day for the Aspen Institute, for all the fellows of the Global Leadership Network, and particularly for our family. The star tonight, of course, is Bill Bynum, and we are happy that you will have the chance to meet him and to hear about all the work that he has done. But it is also a night for us to remember and talk about my husband, John, and why his example motivated us to honor people like Bill. So this really is a family event for us. Not only my three beautiful, brilliant children are here, but 3 of John's 4 siblings are here. His sister Noreen, his sister Mary, and his brother Charles will be here. I think he was stuck in the Lincoln Tunnel last time I checked. And also my sister Regina, and my brother Paul and brother-in-law Tom. I also have nieces and nephews, so it's a great assembly. They have all come up from Philadelphia, and we do always joke that the Irish will travel any distance for an open bar. In this case, it's an open bar for a good cause. And many of John's colleagues and friends are here, to our great joy. You know, you also carry John's memory with you, and you also recognize why this prize in his honor is so meaningful to us. I'm also happy to recognize two of our judges who are here tonight. From Costa Rica, Brizio Biondi Mora is here. He's an international development expert. And also Alara Atuno, who is now president of the Uganda People's Congress and formerly a UN statesman. Joining us tomorrow will be Secretary of State Madeleine Albright, who has served as a judge for us for many years now. As many of you will remember, we did not have this event last year because of Hurricane Sandy. In fact, last year's winner, Amit Bhatia, flew from his home in Delhi to London and actually was stuck for 3 days in the London airport trying to get to New York. So I'm happy to say Amit is here tonight. So I want to have a special shout out. Where are you, Amit? There you are. We're happy that you're in the Metropolitan Club this year, and we're happy to recognize you. One of John's friends reminded me that John himself was, in a good way, like a hurricane, a force of nature that would sweep you along in his path. It was always exciting. You never really knew where you were going to go, but you knew it would be big and that everything in his path would be changed for the better. During the course of John's life, he transformed himself several times and transformed others as well. One of the reasons that he thought he had a good head for business was that his mother gave him lots of responsibility. As the oldest of 5 children, his mom would send him out to the butchers. She would dispatch him to the groceries, and most amazing, she would send him with an envelope of cash once a month to pay the mortgage. Now, it's hard to imagine today sending a child with an envelope of cash, something like 10 blocks, to the Elmwood Savings Bank on Woodland Avenue in Southwest Philadelphia. Even the concept of paying in cash is unusual for us. But nonetheless, we speculate maybe that's the start of his banking career, and certainly the start of his having this lifelong penchant for asking everybody he met what they did and why they did it. Now, John was extremely shy when I met him. It's hard for people to believe that, who knew him later in his career, but he did make up his mind to change that. And so when he went to college, he made a conscious effort to be more outgoing, form relationships, and in fact was elected student body president. He had a will to make that change. He just willed it to himself that he was going to change. And he developed those persuasive skills that later convinced many clients to work with him and later convinced many ambitious young professionals to help him to build the asset management business. Now, when I met him, he was also not much of a student. His high school class rank was near the bottom. He was 385th out of 500 boys. I, on the other hand, was a nerdy straight-A student from a family that thought of class rank as something that should be in the single digits. So, oddly enough, after he met me, he suddenly started paying attention, worked intently, and in a year, had rocketed up to the top 5% of his class. So as this showed, John has a strong will and intense drive. He could set high expectations for himself, and he did this for others too. He made others reach for more than they thought they could do. And based on his start, he always had a keen sympathy for very bright people who still never had been academic superstars. I have another favorite story, which I usually tell at this event, so I apologize those of you who heard before because I really love the story. After arriving in America, John's Irish immigrant's mother's first job was working as a maid in a townhouse on Fifth Avenue, probably not that far from here, working as a maid for a partner in an old-line Wall Street firm. So years later, when John could look out as a partner from his Wall Street office and look down on the Statue of Liberty, he would tell me he would reflect on his mom's modest beginnings and think about how amazing that transformation was in a generation. So, in a recent op-ed, Jeffrey Sachs cited the inspiring words of President Kennedy, who visited Ireland in June of 1963, 5 months before his assassination. And in fact, in Ireland this year, they had a big celebration in June commemorating that visit to Ireland. In urging peace, President Kennedy told the Irish Parliament, "The problems of the world cannot be solved by skeptics and cynics, whose horizons are limited by the obvious realities." And he went on to quote George Bernard Shaw, saying, "Some men dream of things that never were and ask why not." A quote that, of course, would be made even more famous when Teddy Kennedy quoted it at Robert Kennedy's funeral. Nonetheless, if we think of it today, we are looking for people who are dreamers and doers. We still need men and women who dream of things that never were and ask why not. And the men and women we honor today, Bill, Adam, Manoj, and Chinwe, they are dreamers too, and they are doers. Our prize is in honor of my husband's passion, his intelligence, his intensity, his interest in doing big things, and in mentoring others. It is very much about will and about transformation and about asking why not. So now I'm going to show you on the screen a brief introduction to the prize and what's the prize about, and show you this year's finalists.
Just about everybody I mentioned this to thought I was crazy.
I think each of us in our lives, we want to feel like we have done something that has made a difference. Succeeding in our individual careers is just not enough. At the end of it, we want to feel that something we did was bigger than ourselves.
I feel guilty all those 18, 20 years of working that I was not doing enough to pay back.
It should feel as morally reprehensible as slavery to imagine that we have an entire class of kids that doesn't get the same opportunity.
I began to look up on the wall and say, well, the clock is ticking. This thing you've always wanted to do in Nigeria, if you don't act now, it will be too late.
I saw an incredible opportunity, hundreds of millions of people around the world who didn't have access to eye care, and I knew my particular skill set could make a huge difference in people's lives.
Our fellows have been very successful in the business careers or other careers they've chosen, and yet they make a conscious decision to do something more. The McNulty Prize winners are really the best of the best and such unique and inspiring individuals.
Good evening. I'm Bryn McNulty, and I'm really thrilled to be here to celebrate the 6th annual John P. McNulty Prize. As my mom mentioned, this prize really does mean so much to my family and to me personally. We're so happy to see everyone here tonight, and it's really remarkable to see what the prize has become, a true force for change in the world. Each year, we feel privileged to recognize this inspiring group of leaders who have made a dramatic turn in their lives, transforming their pursuit of individual success into the pursuit of improving the world around them and the lives of countless others in the most profound ways. Now, let us introduce you to the founder of Araku Originals Limited, for harnessing global niche coffee markets to bring prosperity to rural Indian farmers. And here all the way from India, please stand, Manoj Kumar. Also here tonight, creator of Fundwell, an online marketplace that is democratizing access to capital for inner city businesses and enabling them to grow and become sustainable. Chinwe Oyegoro. Please stand. And making huge strides towards addressing the ocean plastic garbage crisis. In a project that evolved his Cato Fellowship, Method has created a supply chain for recovering ocean plastic and recovered new recycling processes for commercial use. Adam Lowry. And tonight, I have the honor of introducing you to Bill Bynum, the founder and CEO of Hope Credit Union and this year's winner of the John P. McNulty Prize. Bill has been a dedicated advocate for financial justice for nearly 3 decades. He has been an advisor to Presidents Clinton, Bush, and Obama on how to improve economic opportunity for disenfranchised Americans. As many of you know, the recession accelerated growing economic disparity across the United States. Large banks closed branches in low-income rural areas. And as a result, the Mid-South in particular became a bank desert. Bereft of the credit they need to flourish, many communities across Mississippi, Arkansas, Tennessee, and Louisiana are dying on the vine. Bill founded Hope to provide much-needed financial services to these distressed communities, to help them break free from this cycle of poverty, and to give them the means to build their own prosperity. Credit can be the oxygen that revives and sustains economies. It helps people buy houses, build businesses, and create jobs. As you will see shortly, Hope is transforming communities, and it's bringing new opportunity to struggling Americans across the Mississippi Delta. Now, before we invite Bill to the stage, here is a brief window into Hope Credit Union and the courageous work that Bill Bynum and his team are doing. Please enjoy.
The beauty of the Delta is like nowhere else. We have some of the nation's most fertile soil. It's the birthplace of blues, B.B. King, Muddy Waters. While the Delta has its unique beauty, it's also had its unique challenges. It has the highest levels of poverty, has the highest levels of medically underserved, educational attainment, home ownership are all at lower levels than anywhere else in the country. My mom used to always encourage me to ask why. I remember as a kid wondering why people needed money. why couldn't we help each other to succeed? And I think I'm still asking why. There are certain infrastructure that any community needs to be viable. Healthcare, education, and access to financial services.
It's a small town, it's a tight-knit community. We take care of one another.
Hey, Mayor, how you doing?
The bank decided to move out of town and left us high and dry.
When you take hope out of a community, you're leaving it barren.
Banks have fled these communities in record numbers. So we decided to start our own bank. Our charge was to transform the economy of the Delta.
Bill Bynum is a community builder, better than almost anybody I ever saw.
Instead of ownership residing in a few shareholders, the communities own hope.
I just want the best for them. You wanna play with your sister? They'll walk up there and be like, I'm ready to make a deposit. And they'll get a little step stool. Then they just sign a little slip like they actually saying their name.
We didn't know what to do. The house we were in was falling apart. We didn't know where to turn. I'll never forget, it was raining that evening when I moved in this house. I am so proud of what we have here. And Hope did it.
Hope members are blue-collar workers, their families, their business people, their kids who are saving, first-time homeowners. They're people just like you and me.
Hope is that essential human quality that enables people to live beyond their present situation.
Hope is a tomorrow.
Hope is that I'll stay strong and keep living right.
Hope is dignity.
In my darkest dreams, I hope.
If we had not found hope, the town probably would have been lost.
Hope recognizes that we are all bound to each other, that we are a part of a common humanity.
It keeps you going. It keeps you going.
Okay, this is literally the McNulty Prize that we're handing to him.
Thank you so much. Wow. Good evening. Wow. Let me compose myself, excuse me. I've been on stage with Jay Leno. My alma mater gave me the Distinguished Alumnus Prize, but this is really incredibly special. I want to say first how honored I am to be here tonight with Chinwe, Adam, and Manoj. You are making lives better for all of us with the work you do, and I couldn't be more privileged and humbled to be here representing you and an amazing network of Aspen Global Leaders. Wish Keith Berwick was here. He is always whispering in my ear, ideas to action, from success to significance. And Anne and her family are challenging us to keep true to those objectives. I'm very, very excited to be here in a room with all of you, people who understand the importance of enlightened leadership and who share in my love and admiration for the McNulty family. Thank you, Anne, John, Bryn, Kevin, for sharing with us John's legacy, for allowing us to carry on what he's done, what he was about. I didn't have the privilege of knowing him, but I have to believe he would be thrilled to see how you are personifying the kind of smart, committed to the common good type of leadership that we need so much more of in the world today. So again, thank you for sharing this with us. And thank you for honoring the work that we do at Hope. I know that I did not get here by myself, so please bear with me to just recognize and acknowledge people who have been invaluable to the work that we're doing. I'd like to start with Billy Percy. About 20 years ago, Billy Percy hired me against the advice of foundations who said, you need someone with a more demonstrated track record. Well, Billy, I guess tonight suggests that we're on the right track. So thank you, Billy, for the faith you put in me. I talked about my mom and how she challenged me to always ask why. I think I almost drove her nuts, always asking why. But she also challenged me to ask why not. I was walking down the street this morning trying to clear my head, and I walked by the New York Public Library and saw the lions. And I remember her taking me there as a kid and just reading to us, bringing books home, teaching us to read, and to think bigger. And remember, there's a bigger world than the one that we live in, and there's people who we should care about. And so I wish that she was here, but I'm so glad that my sisters are here tonight. They are still giving me a kick in the pants and a pat on the back exactly when I need it. So Betty and Nicole, thank you so much. I certainly would not be here tonight without my wife, whose name happens to be Hope. Hope agreed to pull up roots in North Carolina and move to Mississippi when I made even after I made the dumb decision to watch Mississippi Burning, which wasn't just a bad movie, but it was a bad decision as well. Hope's ability to give of herself to others is as beautiful to me now as it was when I met her 25, 30, 20, 26 years ago. It was actually our 25th anniversary on August 26th, and I got a call from Aspen, and I was walking down in Times Square, and it was Anne McNulty. He said, Bill, I have some news for you. So it was a great anniversary, and thank you. And I also have to recognize my daughter, Blythe. Blythe is, she's my pride and joy, and it's a large reason that I do what I do. So, Blythe, thank you. I have thought several times over the past few days about 30 years ago when I was walking in the mountains of rural North Carolina with Dr. Muhammad Yunus. We were talking about the work he was doing to bring youth banking, to bring economic opportunities and dignity to very poor women in his home country. And I remember thinking, wow, if he can do this in Bangladesh, then certainly we can create a new paradigm here in the United States and bring banking tools into poor communities and help lift people up and bring those who are most vulnerable into the economic mainstream. You can imagine how excited I was. It was a great day when Dr. Yunus won the Nobel Peace Prize for the Grameen Bank. But I have to say that I'm much more excited to be here tonight with you accepting this year's McNulty Prize. And I say this because we intuitively we know that poverty saps human potential. Too often we tend to overlook poverty here in the United States. I am so hopeful that this recognition of Hope Credit Union helps us to understand how debilitating poverty is, not just to individual sufferers, but to the communities that they live in as a whole, and even to the entire country. And helps us realize how important it is that we make eradicating poverty a national priority. Nowhere is this poverty greater. This challenge is nowhere greater than in my home region, where Mississippi and the surrounding states comes up short on almost every indicator of economic and social well-being. Just imagine being a black child in Mississippi and knowing that half of the kids who look like you are likely to live below the poverty level. Imagine knowing that the odds say that there's a 50% chance that you go to bed hungry, that you live in substandard housing, that you'll have inadequate health care. Thank goodness we know that this does not have to be a permanent state of existence, and that fixing it doesn't require rocket science. The evidence is clear. It's clear when you see the vitally important jobs and services that are generated when we finance a community health center in a rural community, or when we finance a grocery store that brings fresh produce into food deserts. It's clear when 85% of the mortgages that Hope finances goes to first-time home buyers, like the Bowens that you saw here. And when 60% of those homeowners report that they now live in a safer neighborhood, or that their kids have more economic and recreational opportunities, and that their kids are doing better in school because they're in a nurturing environment. The solution is clear when we think about how bright the future will be for those twins, the Mackenzie and Michaela Christensen, who you saw in the video, who each month bring their piggy banks to the credit union, put them on the counter, and makes a deposit in their very own checking account. And when their mother opens a checking account instead of going to a payday lender because she knows how important it is to be open, putting money in her account in her kid's financial institution. It's clear that we have the answers. Since the recession, 93% of the 1,800 bank branches that have closed across the country have been in economically distressed, low-income census tracts. People in those places didn't all of a sudden stop needing access to affordable financial services, to buy a home, money to start a business, to support their families. We cannot leave these families, our neighbors, to wither in bank deserts that are emerging across the country. I wish I could put you on a bus and take you through the Delta. You'd see a region struggling with harsh conditions, one that has very few banks, but on every corner there's a payday lender or a check casher willing to charge people 400, 500 criminal interest rates that makes it harder for them to climb the economic ladder. But you could also see people who are doing their best to provide a decent home for their families, a good education for their kids, and who are willing to work hard to make these things possible. Over the past 20 years at Hope, we have transformed lives when basic financial services are made available to people in impoverished communities. This year marks the 50th anniversary of so many important civil rights events that help put our country on a path toward this more perfect union that we're always seeking to become. It gives me chills when I think about Myrlie Evers saying that the work that we're doing at Hope is exactly what Medgar would be doing if he were alive today. Martin Luther King was assassinated in Memphis, working to bring economic justice to workers in Memphis. He was making the move, trying to move the civil rights movement from the courts to the economic battlefield. He realized how important it was to enable people to help themselves, to lift themselves up, and to lift up the communities and the economy around them. We're in this room because we believe what John McNulty believed. John believed that anything is possible when we invest in people. Anything is possible. For the past 20 years, Hope has put our resources on the line behind good people striving to make life better for them and their neighbors and their communities. And hundreds of thousands of people have proved that we made the right bet. We can lift people up. We can transform the financial system and make it work for everyone. It can be done in Bangladesh. We're doing it in the Delta. We can do it anywhere. It's a matter of will. And there's a lot of will in this room and across this country. I think it's time to finish the job that Megger and Martin started. Thank you so much, Aaron.
Wow, thank you. It's amazing. Thank you very much, Ann, for doing this. But in particular, let me thank Kevin and Johnny and Bryn. I think your father would be very proud of this for two reasons. First of all, your father knew what the American dream was, which was working hard and moving from the bottom of the economic ladder to the top of the economic ladder. Secondly, he would have really loved this because what Bill has just told us is that banking can be and is a noble profession. Banking is there to serve people, and we forget that now and then in this day and age. But it is very important. When I watch the kids coming out of Hurricane Katrina, one of the biggest problems they faced trying to get their lives together was that they were unbanked. Right. And coming to the beautiful Delta country, Mississippi, and doing that, you've really shown the importance of it. So thank you very much, Bill.
Thank you, Walter. Thank you.
You know, we think of you as a Henry Crown Fellow, but you started at the Aspen Institute before that. We have our policy programs, and besides the Crown program, and it really does show how the Aspen Institute ties together. You came in, is Peggy Clark here? Yeah, Peggy, stand up. Peggy was running a program, Economic Opportunities Program, right? And Bill was pretty young then, didn't have any grade. Tell me about it.
Yes, I was younger, but actually Peggy ran a very exciting program. I was one of 7 of the very early micro enterprise development programs in the country. It was North Carolina at the Rural Center, and we were actually trying to replicate what Dr. Yunus had done in Bangladesh, in rural North Carolina, also trying variations of that. And Peggy pulled a group of us together to learn from each other, much like Aspen does through the Global Leaders Network. We exchanged notes and developed best practices, what not to do, learn from each other's mistakes. And we were, I think we shared that and helped to contribute to a growing microenterprise field across the country. So.
And then you ended up being tapped to be a Crown Fellow. How did that change things?
Again, I've got several board members who do a great job of keeping me on track and also opening doors for me. Ed Luberger was the chairman of Entergy Corporation at that time. He was one of the founders of the Enterprise Corporation, and Ed had been involved with Aspen, and he really loved the executive leadership program. I don't know what role he played in Antigone, but Ed nominated me to be a Crown Fellow. I was in the 2nd class of Crown Fellows with Peter Riling, we had a lot of good times together. It gave us an opportunity to get away from the day-to-day and think deeply about how our work, the implications of our work in the world, and try to, as I said, go from success to significance. We had some really amazing people in my class. Lee Lu, who was one of the key leaders in Tiananmen Square. Reed Hastings, who's the founder of Netflix. Suzanne Orr Johnson, a leader here on Wall Street with Goldman Sachs. Peter and I may have been sort of the token nonprofits in that group, but it was a life-changing experience for me.
And part of what the Crown program does is you create projects. I mean, I do think that one of the great things, and I also think that John would have been proud of this, is that it's not just about talk, it's about putting talk into action. We saw it on the screen. And your project ended up being the Hope Credit Union, right?
That's right. I had started Hope in a church in Jackson. It was my hobby. My day job was what Billy hired me to do to run the Enterprise Corporation, but there were, the church was in a neighborhood that was preyed upon, people were preyed upon by pawn shops, cash for title lenders, payday lenders. And we felt it was important to give people another means, something that was more affordable and more, actually didn't put them in debt traps. And so we actually started the first credit union in 1995 that had been chartered in Mississippi in 8 years. I don't think there's been another credit union chartered since then. We didn't know how valuable that piece of paper would be, but we were struggling early on. It was, everybody that the pastor didn't want to make a loan to, he sent them to the credit union, and we helped a lot of people. Our delinquencies were high, and we were struggling. But one of the beauties of the Aspen Fellows Program was help us think outside the box. How can we solve these seemingly insurmountable problems? And so my project was to take Hope and stabilize it and actually expand it beyond the community, the neighborhood that we were focused on in Jackson. And so that's what I set out to do. We were around less than 800 members at that time. We probably had about $120,000 in assets. So we were we were kind of weak-kneed, but fortunately I got a lot of good advice from my fellows, colleagues, from the mentors in the program, and they said, go for it, Bill, and we did.
And so you moved into the Delta country. Why?
The Enterprise Corporation had been started a year earlier. That's why I moved to Mississippi, and it was a loan fund. Lisa Mensa, who's with Aspen Institute, was at the Ford Foundation then. It was actually one of the early, made one of the early grants to the Enterprise Corporation, and we soon saw that there was a lot more viable demand than we could raise grant monies to support. And so we needed a model that was sustainable, and we thought that banking was the right way to go, but we felt that a credit union was a better fit philosophically and structurally for what we hoped to do. And so in around 2002, I'd already pulled several of my colleagues at Hope into volunteering at the credit union to help stabilize it. But in 2002, the Enterprise Corporation became the sponsor to bring the ability to access federally insured deposits to the loan instead of relying on grants and charitable donations solely. And so it was a key step in our development. It gave the Enterprise Corporation the ability to access capital, and the Enterprise Corporation gave the credit union professional experience, infrastructure, and management.
Mm-hmm. Tell me a story or two.
Gosh, there are so many. The folks you saw in Utica, Mississippi, were really, I think, hopeless. They went to public hearings to try to convince the bank. It was Mississippi's largest bank. It announced that it was going to close 23 branches. 9 of them were in towns that were they were the only bank, and they did everything they could, but they didn't have any recourse. And so, fortunately, the mayor called us, and he opened up the city hall, invited us to go in and start taking accounts in the city hall while we were trying to negotiate to buy the bank from the bank that was closing. We weren't able to buy it. it was interesting. It's sort of like a garage sale. You see something out on the street, and when someone tries to buy it, the price goes up. And so we weren't able to negotiate the price, but eventually we were able to buy the facility. We couldn't buy the loans and the deposits, but we bought the facility and renovated it. It is probably the nicest building in Utica. It's got the first ATM. We've added new services there, and we actually hired one of the former tellers of that bank. Everyone in town knows her, and it's really been amazing. It's brought people together across racial lines. It's brought people together across age lines. You have kids coming in opening accounts. You have one of the women in the movie actually left New Orleans after Katrina and moved to Utica, where she had grown up, and now she's there organizing the elderly in town to go out and recruit for hope. So it's really become, instead of relying on a institution whose shareholders are miles away and don't have a real good feel for the needs of the community, now they own it. It's their community-owned, member-owned financial institution, and they're working to make it strong. It's actually becoming one of our best-performing branches.
Wow. You know, people like Jim Barksdale, who is involved in the Aspen Institute and others, have built up on hope this notion that economic empowerment can work, and I think in some ways you've influenced the whole state of Mississippi. Tell me about that.
Well, Jim's been an incredible friend. Jim he chaired Governor Barber's Hurricane Recovery Commission, and interestingly, there was not a part of that plan that focused on affordable housing. Jim invited us, we sat down with him, and he invited us to write the affordable housing section of the plan, and it got blessed by the state, and then it sat on the shelf. Jim, not being one to sit on his thumbs very long, said, well, hell, if the state's not going to do it, I'm going to build houses myself. And he contracted with Hope to actually build test models for modular housing to see what worked. There was so much chaos, different code regulations, different people who never had a mortgage before were trying to navigate things that even folks in this room with the best accountants and attorneys would have had difficult navigating, but they needed help. And so Jim used us as a pilot to develop an initiative called Home Again that built houses that are some of the best houses now in Parish Christian. And we used that example then to go back to the state and to the federal government and create a program where at the end of the day we counseled over 10,000 people, and they were able to access $600 million to rebuild their homes and get their lives back on track.
Wow. Now, for those of you who don't know, Parish Christian is down on the Gulf Coast, not in the Delta. Did that migrate up that sort of thinking so that it also worked in the Delta country? And explain what the Delta country is. It's sort of northwest Mississippi. There
are a lot of different definitions of the Delta. One has it, Faulkner has it starting in the lobby of the Peabody Hotel, ending in Catfish Alley in Vicksburg. But our initial definition were 55 counties along the river in Arkansas, Louisiana, and Mississippi, some of the most distressed counties in the country.
Used to be great cotton growing, very fertile.
Absolutely. Some of the best agricultural land in the world is there in the Mississippi Delta, but over the years, agriculture has shifted. We didn't quite make it through the industrial evolution. Technology is slow to come there, and so there needed to be a different approach. And so we were created to bring financial services and technical support to businesses in the Delta. But the more we worked, the more people around the region knocked on our doors and say, hey, we need these tools in other parts of the region. We need it in low-income communities in Memphis. We need it in Little Rock. We need it in Jackson. Our first branch outside of the Delta was in New Orleans, in Central City, which used
right next to Cafe Reconcile, right, on Aretha Haley Boulevard.
You know it well. It used to be a thriving business
district.
district.
Peter Reiling is here, but I think he went there last week, right? With,
did you make a deposit?
No, he took out a loan. He got easy credit.
All right, we'll bring him in some point. But we opened a branch there about
why?
there was an initiative. People were actually trying to start a microloan program. We were approached by a church. I think Billy Percy knew someone down there who was working to start a microloan program, and they heard that we had experience in micro lending. And so we consulted with them and developed a plan, and then when it was all said and done, they said, well, what would it take to bring hope to Mississippi, to New Orleans? And so we thought about it, and it actually worked quite well. We were able to work with churches, community groups, to bring banking services to a community that used to be a thriving business district. It was it was black entrepreneurs, Jewish entrepreneurs. People would go there, and I heard stories about just incredible talent and entrepreneurship there. But in the 80s, crime and drugs took it down. And so they were trying to revitalize it, and they had not had a bank there in decades. Again, pawn shops, check cashers, but no financial institution had located there. And so we, again, the community organized, and it was their doing to bring hope to New Orleans. And
when you started your Crown project, did you know that credit and credit unions and getting the unbanked to be banked would be that important, or did you think that was just a side part of what you were doing?
No, it's funny. I think I have credit unions in my blood. When I was a kid, there used to be a credit union in the vice principal's garage as we walked from school. And
this was in North Carolina, not Mississippi.
This was in North Carolina, and I remember people going in there getting loans for basic needs. And my mom, we were able to, I think our first washing machine was financed through the credit union. The suit that my grandmother bought for me to wear to college, she took a deposit out of the credit union.
Wow.
And bought my suit. And so that was, I appreciated how effective it was, people pooling their resources together and helping their neighbors. I mean, it's just, it makes all the sense in the world. And I think that's what we're trying to do at Hope, is to encourage people to understand that we all are in this together. When you look at the demographics of our region, of our country, last year, half of the children in Mississippi were non-white. The trends are increasing. And so when you consider the fact that these kids are likely to have less educational attainment, poorer health, lower income, we're all going to suffer if we don't do what we have to do to make those people more productive, to get them to help drive the economy. And so I think credit unions are a perfect system, a perfect structure that allows people to pool their resources together and help their neighbors.
What would it take to bring it to a higher scale?
We're trying to do that. Again, as we said, banks are closing in record numbers, and it's not because people don't need the services. We think that creates an opportunity for hope, but most credit unions grow at a much slower rate than we have grown. We're a little masochistic in what we've tried to do in terms of growth, but we believe that we can transform the way poor people engage with the financial system. We're trying to raise $20 million to grow Hope from what we're currently is $170 million to $300 million, to grow from 28,000 members to 60,000 members. And the $20 million will allow us to capitalize that growth, expand the number of branches, and within 2 to 3 years, we'll have a sustainable branch that can support itself. But we need the capital to get there, and that's.
And you're raising this capital philanthropically, or through foundations, or through the market?
We've actually recently started our first appeal to individuals. We're absolutely going to foundations. We're going to banks, but there are not a lot of large banks in our region. There's not a lot of corporate foundations or private foundations in our region. So we're going around the country trying to find friends of hope who are willing to make a tax-deductible contribution to our 501c3 or to make a low-interest loan that our regulators allow us to use as capital. And the lender will get their principal back, and we'll use that to leverage to grow the credit union and expand the number of people that we serve.
It's been one of the most successful projects in our Global Leaders Network, hence you winning the McNulty Prize, but you saw so many of them, including the other people in this room. What have you learned about projects and the Crown program and Global Leadership program type projects that can help others trying to do those projects?
Again, having a network of very smart people who care about making a difference in the world helps a lot. I've been able to call on my Crown Fellows colleagues for advice. Chinwe Onyegoro was actually one of a few people who came down. I brought him to New Orleans. I said, let me buy you dinner in exchange for picking your brain. And so she and others came to New Orleans, and we talked about the idea of raising capital to expand Hope's impact. And they were very generous in their time. They were very honest. It's having people who won't sugarcoat things is important. But they, at the end of the day, they said that this is the right thing to do, and you can do it, and we'll help you. And again, I know that I'm not here today because of myself. I've had a lot of great help, great support, great friends, and a lot of that has come from the Aspen Global Leaders Network.
You've been talking about maybe even helping create another Leaders Network, which would be a Gulf South Leaders Network. Tell us about your hope there.
As you well know, we have a lot of great people and a lot of great potential, but the region is the Delta because we don't have enough. And so I think our vision is to build from within, to expose people to the kind of experiences and opportunities that I've been exposed to as a part of being affiliated with Aspen. It helps you to think outside of the box, get outside of your comfort zone, and push the envelope. I think for a long time, it's very easy to become parochial, to just look inward, and the world's becoming too diverse. We're too interconnected. We cannot just look in your backyard for solutions, and our hope is to broaden the perspective, broaden the horizon of really high potential leaders in the Delta, and see if we can collectively move the region to a higher level.
I hope we can start that. Speaking of your Aspen and seminar things, who did you play in Antigone? And explain why that inside reference to those who may not know.
In the executive leadership program, we are required to get out of our comfort zone, and so we perform Antigone. I was one of the judges. I was one of the narrators, so to speak, and I'm not much of an actor, but it was a great experience. Again, as much as performing the play, it gets you to engage with your fellow participants in the program. They're great moderators, and to hear Secretary Albright talk about her experience with Antigone, it's clear that it's a way for people to come together and again, get outside your comfort zone.
Those of you who have not done it, I do urge you to take the seminar in Aspen or with the Institute, as well as get involved in our leadership programs. So final question, which is a broad one. I was thinking about it when you were talking about demographics, and the economic demographics, racial demographics, whatever. I read something astonishing last night. It was in Neil Ferguson's book. It gets right to John McNulty, which is that 30 years ago, somebody born in the bottom quintile of the economic wealth in this country had about a 30% chance to make it to the top or the top 2 quintiles, 40% chance. Nowadays, the person born, and I'm sure these statistics are right because I just read it last night, in the bottom quintile has a 7% chance of making it to the top. It is half the chance that a person in England has. There's a 14% chance. And I remember thinking England was a class structure where it's hard to have social mobility. At the core value, the Aspen Seminar value that you're dealing with is opportunity, economic opportunity.
Absolutely.
How do we restore what is the basic American dream, whether it's Ben Franklin, John McNulty, or yourself, which is moving up the economic ladder because we all have an opportunity?
Unfortunately, we can't move everyone to Minnesota. Minnesota is, I think, fares the best in terms of economic mobility. Memphis, on the other hand, is one of the worst cities. Clarksdale, Mississippi, Vicksburg, also in the top 10 in terms of the least chance to climb the economic ladder. Again, I think we have to make eradicating poverty a national priority. I think we do often tend to put our heads in the ground. I think people have so long considered Mississippi and written it off. Don't think that there is potential there. But Mississippi has created some of the most impressive talents in this country. Mississippi in the Mid-South, not just music, but intellectual firepower. People who can do anything if they have the opportunity, but we've got to have the will to make the investments. Was able to bring the Assistant Secretary for Financial Services and get him in a car and drive from Memphis through the Mississippi Delta. And he realized that he did not have a full understanding of how different the world is in rural communities and places like the Delta. I think we've got to help open eyes. We've got to explain to people that there are communities in this country where people are on the outside looking in, where poverty, Mississippi Delta has, Mississippi and the surrounding region has 25% of the counties that have been above 20% poverty for 3 decades in a row. That is not a way for people to live. And I think if people see it, they understand that it's unacceptable and that, again, it's not rocket science. We have the tools to eradicate poverty. The people on the video are examples of what's possible. When you give people the tools, they can do anything, and I think it's a matter of will.
You know, if I had to give an answer, it would be to create more Bill Bynums, and we're very proud to have you as a fellow of the Aspen Institute.